Hi viewers, welcome to SEKHAR'S Bio Factory for NEET. If you like this video, subscribe my channel and click on bell icon to get notification. In this video, I am going to explain one of the topic in anatomy of flowering plants. It is complex tissues, xylem and phloem as a example. The complex tissue, generally it is made up of more than one type of cells, but all these cells are work together as a unit. A complex tissue, generally it is defined as a collection of structurally dissimilar type of cells, but all the cells performing a common function or set of function is defined as complex tissues. There are two types of complex tissues in plant body. In these, the two types, one is xylem and another one is phloem tissue. Xylem. So xylem, it is a complex tissue because the xylem tissue is structurally having four different type of cells but commonly performs a single function. The components of xylem is Xylem Tracheids, Xylem Vessels, Xylem Fibers and Xylem parenchyma. In this, the first type is Xylem Tracheids. The tracheids are the elongated tube-like cells, and these cells it consists of very thick cell wall, but it is vary in form, having some thin areas at few locations. But the main characteristic feature of the cell wall is it is a lignified cell wall and the cell having tapering ends. Generally, these xylem tracheids are dead cells because after maturation, the cell it is a divide of protoplasm. Protoplasm is completely absent. Inside of the cell, it consists of a empty space, and this empty space is referred to as lumen, and it is the main site for the transportation of water and minerals. These tracheids, generally these are arranged one above the other. Due to arrangement of tracheids one above the other, it forms a continuous channel, and with the help of this channel, water minerals can be transported from root to stem and leaves. The second component is xylem vessel. So xylem vessels are also called as trachea, and these xylem vessels are generally a long tube-like structure, but it is not a cell because this long tube-like structure it is made up of many cells, and these are called as vessel members. So a vessel it is composed of a row of cells placed one above the other, and the internal walls are completely intervening or dissolve or degenerates to form a long tube. So every vessel member which is present in xylem vessel, this having a lignified cell wall. Along with that, at center it consists of a larger lumen, it is called cavity. It is formed due to divide of protoplasm, and it is the main site for water and mineral supply. The end walls of these vessels are generally oblique or cross, and these cross or oblique plate it consists of many pores called perforation plate. The vessel members are generally interconnected through these perforations which are present in their common walls. The very most important characteristic feature, it is gymnosperms and pteridophytes. Generally in their xylem it lack xylem vessels. The presence of these xylem vessels is the main characteristic future of angiospermic plants. In flowering plants, the tracheids and vessels, these are the two main cells for the transportation of water, minerals. Along with that, it gives mechanical support to plant body. The third component is xylem fiber. Xylem fibers have highly thickened cell wall, and due to having of this highly thickened cell wall, its lumen is aberrated. That means it's completely degenerated or very minute lumen present in xylem fibers. And these xylem fibers having highly thickened lignified walls with a narrow and minute lumen, but the fibers which are present in xylem, it may be septate or aseptate. That means the cross walls may be present or absent within xylem fibers. The fibers which are septate having internal septa, but which is aseptate, in this there is no septa. Xylem fibers, these are the dead cells, but due to having of very minute lumen, it never transport water and minerals. But due to having of highly thickened lignified cell walls, xylem fibers, it provide mechanical support to various plant organs present in plant body. The fourth component is xylem parenchyma. So in between xylem tissue, some of the living and thin cell-walled cells are present called xylem parenchyma. Its cell wall is made up of only cellulose. And inside of this xylem parenchyma, it consists of a prominent nucleus. Along with that, it consists of dense cytoplasm. The xylem parenchyma generally present, it helps to store food material in the form of a reserve food like starch and fat. Along with that, these xylem parenchyma have ability to store some of the substances like tannins. Along with this, the xylem parenchymatous cells which help in radial conduction of water in the form of ray of parenchymatous cells. Along with this, the xylem tissue is basically two types based on origin. In this, the first type is primary xylem and second type is secondary xylem. The primary xylem. So primary xylem, it is developed at beginning and due to primary growth by primary meristematic tissue is called primary xylem, and this primary xylem again it is two types. In this, the first one is protoxylem and second one is metaxylem. Both protoxylem and metaxylem are referred to as primary xylem. So the first formed xylem during growth and development is called as protoxylem. But later some amount of primary xylem is formed from primary meristem is called metaxylem. The metaxylem is more mature than protoxylem and consists of wider lumen. The protoxylem has vessels with a narrow diameter and metaxylem having vessels with a broad diameter. So depending upon its arrangement of primary xylem, especially on the basis of relative position of protoxylem and metaxylem in root and stem, the arrangement is two types. In this, the first type is endork condition. So endork condition means in case of stem, so the protoxylem lie towards pith or center, metaxylem it present towards peripheral of the organ. That condition is called as endork condition. And second type is exork condition. So in case of a root stele, The protoxylem it present towards peripheral and the metaxylem present towards center or pit. Such arrangement of primary xylem is called exorxylem. It is seen in roots. The secondary xylem is the xylem which is formed during secondary growth by secondary meristematic tissue like a cambium ring is called as secondary xylem. The functions of xylem. Xylem is a main tissue and it helps in the conduction of water and minerals within plant body. The xylem function as a conducting tissue for water and minerals from root to top of the plant body in unidirectional. And also xylem it have a capability to provide mechanical strength due to having of lignified cell walls. The second main complex tissue is phloem. The phloem is a living tissue, but this living tissue it have a capability for the transport of food materials from where it is available or synthesized is called as source, and where these food materials are utilized it is called shrink. The phloem is also complex tissue like xylem because in the structure of phloem it consists of four different elements in angiosperms. In this, the components of phloem is the first component sieve tube elements, second component is companion cell, third component is phloem fibers, and fourth component is phloem parenchyma. In this, the first one is sieve tube elements. So out of these four components, except phloem fibers and remaining three are living cells, but sieve tube elements are the tube-like structure, but it is not a cell. The sieve tube elements. So generally these are the along a tube-like structure which are arranged longitudinally in the structure of phloem. And sieve tubes. These are made up of many cells called sieve tube elements or sieve tube members. All these cells they becomes into a long tube-like structure is called sieve tube. The sieve tube elements generally it consists of a thin cell wall, and this cell wall is made up of cellulose. So a mature sieve tube element generally it consists of a peripheral cytoplasm and a large central vacuole, but after maturation in sieve tube elements nucleus is completely absent is called as eunucleate cell. The end plate of each sieve tube it consists of perforated like sieve pores. So many minute pores are present in their end walls called sieve pores, and due to presence of these sieve pores that is called sieve plate. So generally the sieve plate having many perforations and these are arranged in sieve like manner to called sieve plate. It is the main characteristic feature of sieve tube elements. The main function of these sieve tube elements are, so all these are the functions controlled by the nucleus of companion cell because the sieve tubes are closely associated with companion cells. So protophlorium it consists of very minute or narrow sieve tube, and metaphlorium it consists of bigger sieve tubes. Sieve tubes are generally absent in pteridophytes and gymnospermic plants. But instead of the sieve tubes, these members consist of sieve cells in phloem tissue. The second component is companion cell. So companion cells are the specialized parenchymatous cells, and these cells are closely associated with sieve tube elements in phloem. each companion cell. It is long, narrow, and also it consists of a thin cell wall. Along with that, these are attached to lateral side of sieve tube elements in phloem tissue. And one more important thing, the common wall present between sieve tube element and companion cell is usually thin, and it consists of very minute thin areas called pits, and it is a pit field. It helps to transportation of various materials in between companion cells and sieve tubes. Along with this, it can form a thin cytoplasmic bond called plasmodesmata. The companion cells, they retain nucleus throughout their life, and this nucleus regulate all functions in sieve tubes. Along with that, the companion cells, it helps to maintain some pressure gradient in sieve tubes. Due to this pressure gradient or pressure differences at different location, the food material transportation take place from higher pressure to lower pressure. It helps in food transportation. So these companion cells are found in angiosperms only. It is the main characteristic feature of angiosperms. But in gymnosperms, these companion cells are absent. But instead of these companion cells, it consists of albuminous cells in phloem tissue. The third component is phloem fibers. So phloem fibers are the dead cells and is also called as bast fibers, and it is a sclerenchymatous fiber. That's why it is dead in nature. There are These are the fibers present very long and having pointed ends like needle apex. At maturity, so the fibers, it lost their protoplasm completely, and due to lacking of protoplasm in cell, it becomes dead and it provide mechanical support only. The phloem fibers are generally absent in primary phloem, but the secondary phloem, which is formed during secondary growth, it consists of phloem fibers. Some more example for phloem fibers. So the jute fiber, flax, and hemp fibers, which are commercially useful to us, all these are extracted from phloem tissue. It is phloem fibers. They having commercial economic importance. The fourth component is phloem parenchyma. So phloem parenchyma are the elongated living cells with the tapering ends and arranged cylindrically along with various components of phloem tissue. And in each phloem parenchymatous cells, it consists of dense cytoplasm and prominent nucleus. The cell wall of this phloem parenchyma is made up of cellulose, and the parenchymatous cells have minute thin areas called pits. These pits are present in between the phloem parenchyma only. So with the help of these pits, the neighboring phloem parenchyma cells are connected to each other with common walls between them, and it form plasmodesmata in between phloem parenchyma only. The phloem parenchyma main function is it stores food material. Along with that, it have a capability to store various substances like resins, latex, and mucilage. The phloem parenchyma is generally absent in monocotyledon plants. The phloem, again, it is classified into two types based on its origin. In this, first one is a primary phloem and second one is secondary phloem. The primary phloem, it is formed during primary growth of plant body by primary meristematic tissue is called primary phloem. This primary phloem again classified into two types depending upon its relative state of maturity. In this, the first type is protophlloem and second type is metaphlloem. The protophlloem means the first formed phloem is called as protophlloem and laterally formed primary phloem is called as metaphloem. Both are example for primary phloem and formed from primary meristematic tissue. The secondary phloem is the phloem. It is formed during secondary growth. At this time, the cambium it can produces phloem towards outside of the cambium ring is called secondary phloem. And the main function of phloem is the phloem it helps in the transportation of organic materials from leaf to other parts of plant body like root, growing tip of stem, leaves, flowers and fruits in multi-directional flow. Along with that, sieve tube elements which are present in phloem, it helps in conduction of food materials. The companion cells, it helps to maintain pressure gradient within sieve tube elements at a different location. It helps for their transportation. The phloem fibers present in phloem tissue, they have a capability to provide mechanical support, but along with these phloem fibers are economically useful to us. The phloem parenchyma, which is present within phloem tissue, it acts as a storaging tissue for food materials. Along with that, it can store various substances like resins, tannins, mucilase and latex. So these are the characters and functions of xylem and phloem tissues as an example for complex tissues. Thanks for watching.